The neighborhood was the kind that usually echoed with laughter and the soft hum of morning routines. Tree-lined streets, white picket fences, and smiling faces. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing much ever went wrong. But on this particular morning the calm was shattered, not by a siren or shouting, but by a faint, desperate whimper that barely cut through the quiet. No one noticed at first. The sound was faint, almost lost beneath the rustling of leaves and the distant barking of a dog down the block. But to Lily, barely a year old, the noise was impossible to ignore. Sitting in her stroller, her bright eyes scanned the alleyway that bordered the street, her tiny hand pointing repeatedly toward the narrow passage between two aging fences. Sarah, her mother glanced down and smiled. "What is it, baby?" she asked softly, assuming Lily's usual fascination with the fluttering leaves or the chirping birds. But Lily wasn't distracted by nature's usual delights. She squirmed and babbled insistently, pointing toward a dark corner where sunlight barely reached. Sarah followed her gaze, feeling a sudden chill creep over her skin. There, almost hidden in the shadows, was something that did not belong. A German shepherd lay motionless, duct-taped tightly to a rusty metal pole. The tape wrapped cruelly around his muzzle and legs, binding him so he couldn't move or cry out for help. His fur was matted with dirt and dried blood, patches missing, revealing thin, aching skin underneath. His ribs showed sharply beneath. His coat. He was starving. His eyes, wide and terrified, locked on Sarah and Lily, as if pleading for rescue. For a moment, Sarah froze, disbelief flooding her. How could someone do this? How had the dog been left here, trapped and suffering? Unnoticed for days. The whimpering grew louder, a heartbreaking sound that clawed at Sarah's heart. She set the stroller down and cautiously approached, her voice trembling. "It's okay, boy. I'm here to help." The dog flinched at first, but then seemed to sense the kindness in her tone. Lily's small fingers reached out toward the dog, and surprisingly, he didn't pull away. Instead, his tail gave a faint, hopeful wag. Panic and urgency flooded Sarah's mind. She knew she had to act fast. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed the local animal rescue. "Please, there's a dog trapped in an alley. He's bound with duct tape. He looks badly hurt. I think he's been there for days." As she spoke, neighbors began to gather, drawn by the crowd and the story unfolding. Whispers of shock and anger filled the air. How could someone be so cruel? Mothers clutched their children tighter, and even the roughest-looking men shook, their heads in disbelief. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for help to arrive. The dog's breathing was shallow. Every labored inhale was a reminder that time was running out. Lily sat quietly beside the dog, her baby babble seeming to soothe him somehow. Sarah marveled at the strange, unspoken bond between her daughter and the injured animal. Finally, the animal rescue team appeared, faces grim but determined. They knelt beside the German shepherd, carefully cutting away the duct tape, working swiftly to free him from his cruel prison. The dog flinched and whimpered but didn't resist, as if relief had finally broken through the haze of pain and fear. They lifted him gently into a carrier, promising Sarah they would do everything to save him. As the rescue team drove away, Sarah turned back to Lily, who was still staring after the van with wide eyes. That little baby saw what no one else did. Sarah whispered, overwhelmed with gratitude and a deep sadness for the dog who had suffered so much. But what happened next, what Lily did after that, would change everything, touching the hearts of everyone who heard the story. The morning sun had barely climbed over the rooftops when Sarah found herself gripping the stroller's handle tighter, heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. The image of the helpless German shepherd stuck in her mind like a scar. How could someone be so cruel? And yet her baby Lily had seen it, the dog that no one else seemed to notice. That tiny spark of innocence had revealed a horror lurking right in their quiet neighborhood. As Sarah pushed the stroller slowly away from the alley, she glanced down at Lily. The baby's eyes were wide and focused, as if she understood far more than any one-year-old should. She babbled again, reaching out with her tiny hand as if trying to comfort the dog, even though he was now out of sight. Sarah had never thought much about dogs before. She was a new mother, overwhelmed with diapers, feeding schedules, and sleepless nights. But something about Lily's unshakable focus on that dog stirred something deep inside her, a fierce protective instinct she hadn't expected to feel for a stranger's pet. Throughout the day, Sarah couldn't shake the image of the dog's eyes, full of fear but flickering with a fragile hope. She searched online for local shelters and animal rescue groups, trying to find a way to follow up on the dog's rescue. Meanwhile, Lily's fascination didn't fade. Whenever Sarah took her out, the baby would stare intently at every shadow, every corner as if searching for the dog. That evening the shelter called. The German Shepherd was alive but barely. His wounds were severe and he was dehydrated and starving. The vet team had named him Titan, a strong name for a dog who had already fought so hard. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. Titan was fighting to survive, and now so was she, fighting the urge to do nothing more, to return to her routine, to leave the pain and cruelty of the world behind. But Lily's quiet determination told her otherwise. The next day, Sarah and Lily made their first visit to the animal hospital. The sterile smell of antiseptics and the low hum of medical machines filled the room where Titan lay. His once proud form was frail, his breathing shallow. But when Lily toddled forward, a remarkable thing happened. Titan's ears twitched, his tired eyes flickered, and for the first time in days, he wagged his tail, weakly but unmistakably. The vet, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Harper, watched with wonder. "Animals have a way of sensing pure hearts," she said softly. "That little girl might be exactly what Titan needs." Sarah smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from Lily's forehead. The baby reached out, placing her chubby hand gently on Titan's muzzle, as if promising she wouldn't let him down. Over the coming days, the visits became a ritual. Every morning, Sarah would wheel Lily into the hospital, where Titan awaited, his condition slowly improving. Lily's laughter and babbling filled the room, breaking through the dog's silent pain. She brought him toys, a squeaky ball, a soft blanket, and even when Titan couldn't play, her presence seemed to fill the empty space. Hospital staff began calling her Titan's little guardian. Nurses would smile, saying it was like watching a miracle unfold. But beyond the tender moments, there was an unspoken urgency. Titan's injuries told a story of unimaginable cruelty, and the community demanded answers. Who had done this to such a loyal, gentle creature? Why had they abandoned him to suffer alone? Sarah couldn't help but wonder too. But for now, her focus was on the present, on Lily and Titan's growing connection, a bond that defied words. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the hospital windows, Lily sat by Titan's side, stroking his fur softly. For a moment, Sarah caught her baby's gaze meet Titan's. It was a moment of understanding, of shared strength. In that quiet room, surrounded by the hum of machines and the scent of healing, something extraordinary was happening. The dog who had been left to die was beginning to trust again, and the baby who had seen his pain was showing the world that even the smallest voices can bring the greatest hope. Sarah squeezed Lily's hand, her heart full of determination. Whatever lay ahead, justice, healing, or heartbreak, they would face it together, because sometimes the most powerful rescue comes not from heroes in uniforms, but from the unbreakable curiosity of a baby's heart. The sun had barely risen when the animal rescue team pulled up in their van, sirens silent, but urgency clear in every movement. They had been alerted just moments ago, but for Titan, the German Shepherd cruelly duct-taped to that rusty pole in the alley, each second felt like an eternity. His breathing was shallow, his strength fading by the minute. Sarah stood nearby, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure Titan could hear it. She clutched Lily's tiny hand, watching as the rescue workers carefully approached the spot where the dog had been found. The crowd of neighbors gathered, hushed and tense, waiting for news. The first thing they did was cut the duct tape binding Titan's legs and muzzle. The tape had burned into his skin, leaving raw, painful wounds. His eyes were wide and glazed, and he didn't try to stand. Instead, he lay still, exhausted beyond measure. One of the rescuers gently lifted him onto a stretcher, whispering soothing words, while another team member prepared the carrier for the trip to the veterinary hospital. The rescue van's door slammed shut, and the team sped away, leaving behind a silence heavier than before. Sarah knelt beside the stroller, brushing a tear from her cheek. Lily babbled softly, reaching out to touch her mother's face, unaware of the gravity surrounding her. At the hospital, the vet team worked quickly. Dr. Harper, the lead veterinarian, assessed Titan's condition with grim eyes. He was severely dehydrated, malnourished, and suffering from wounds infected by days of exposure and neglect. "We need to stabilize him immediately," she told the staff. "His kidneys are shutting down. If we don't act fast, he won't make it through the night." Sarah watched helplessly as Titan was hooked up to IVs, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths. She held Lily close, feeling the baby's small hand press against her own as if to share strength. The hours crawled by. In the sterile hospital room, surrounded by machines and soft beeping sounds, time seemed to lose meaning. Sarah stayed by. Titan sighed as much as she could, whispering stories of hope and courage to the dog who had survived cruelty no one could imagine. Lily, despite her age, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. She sat quietly on Sarah's lap, occasionally reaching out to touch Titan's head. When the dog twitched his ears or blinked slowly, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. At one point, Titan stirred enough to nuzzle Lily's hand, a small but powerful sign that he was still fighting. Dr. Harper came in to update Sarah, her voice soft but serious. "Titan's response to treatment is slow but promising. We have to be patient and keep a close watch. The next 24 hours are critical." That night, Sarah barely slept. She kept replaying the moment Lily had first pointed to the alley, her baby's innocent insistence that something was wrong. Without her, Titan might still be there, trapped and suffering, unheard. The hospital room became a place of quiet miracles. Nurses would bring in food for Titan, but he refused to eat. Only when Lily was there, softly babbling and offering a small piece of softened food from her hand, would Titan accept. It was as if the baby's presence reminded him that not everyone was cruel, that kindness still existed. Outside the hospital, the community began to rally. Local news stations picked up the story, sharing photos of Titan's battered face and Lily's sweet smile. Social media exploded with support, donations, messages of hope and calls for justice. Sarah watched it all unfold with mixed emotions. She was grateful for the support, but terrified for Titan's fragile body. Days passed and Titan's condition slowly improved. His eyes grew clearer, and he began to show faint signs of strength. The vet said he might live, but the road ahead would be long. Throughout it all, Lily remained by his side, the baby who had noticed what no one else did. Her unyielding curiosity had sparked a rescue that would save Titan's life. Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The wounds Titan carried were not only physical, but emotional. Healing would take time, patience, and love. And as the sun rose, each day it brought with it a fragile but growing hope that this dog, abandoned and broken, might one day find peace. But for now, the battle was still raging. Titan was fighting for his life, and the baby was his silent, steadfast champion. The hospital room was filled with a quiet stillness, punctuated only by the soft breathing of Titan and the gentle babbling of a baby. Lily sat on Sarah's lap, her tiny hand resting on the dog's coarse fur, as if sharing a silent promise that she would never leave him alone. In the days since his rescue, something remarkable was unfolding. Titan, once so frightened and weak, was beginning to respond, not just to medicine and care, but to the small, persistent presence of the baby who had first noticed his suffering. Sarah watched with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Lily's innocent fascination with the dog was unlike anything she had seen before. Whenever they arrived at the hospital, the moment Lily laid eyes on Titan, a spark seemed to light up in his tired gaze. He would wag his tail, slow but unmistakable, and tilt his head as if to listen to her tiny voice. Dr. Harper, the veterinarian overseeing Titan's care, shook her head with a soft smile. "Animals can sense the purest hearts," she said. "That little girl's presence is doing more good than any medicine right now." Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was hard to believe that a baby, barely walking and speaking, could bring comfort to a dog who had endured so much pain. But the bond between Lily and Titan was undeniable. Each day, Sarah noticed Titan growing stronger. The wounds that had once seemed so dire began to heal, and his eyes, once glazed with fear, now held a quiet hope. He was still wary of strangers and loud noises, but with Lily he was calm, almost peaceful. Lily too seemed to understand the importance of this connection. She would bring toys, small stuffed animals and colorful balls, to the hospital, placing them gently beside Titan's bed. Sometimes she would sit on the floor, mimicking the way Titan rested, and babble softly as if telling him stories. The hospital staff began to refer to the pair as the healing team. Nurses marveled at how Titan's tail wagged more when Lily was near, how his breathing steadied with her soothing touch. They took photos of the moments, sharing them online where the story of Titan's rescue had already captured hearts. But beneath the joy, Sarah felt a lingering sadness. She knew that Titan's healing was only just beginning. The scars left by his cruel captivity ran deeper than skin and muscle. He flinched at sudden movements and sometimes trembled when loud voices echoed through the hospital halls. Sarah remembered. The night he was found, the terrified eyes, the taped muzzle, the desperate whimper that had drawn Lily's attention. It was a reminder that the world could be cruel, but also that kindness could shine through even the darkest moments. One afternoon, as Sarah and Lily sat beside Titan, a visitor arrived, the detective assigned to investigate the case. He was a quiet man with kind eyes carrying a folder filled with reports and photos. "We're making progress," the detective said gently. "But it's slow. This wasn't just an act of cruelty. It was planned." Sarah nodded, her thoughts racing. She wanted justice for Titan, to find the person responsible and make sure they could never hurt another animal again. But for now, her focus remained on the dog in front of her. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "Titan deserves to know he's safe." Lily reached out and placed a small hand on Titan's head, her fingers brushing over the healing scars. The dog leaned into her touch, eyes closing for a brief moment of peace. In that quiet room, something extraordinary was happening. The bond between a baby and a broken dog was transforming both their lives. Lily's innocence was a balm to Titan's wounded spirit, and Titan's quiet strength was a lesson in resilience. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes as she watched them, two souls, so different, yet so deeply connected. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but in this moment hope was alive and love was healing. News of Titan's rescue and the remarkable bond he shared with baby Lily had spread far beyond the quiet neighborhood where it all began. Social media was flooded with heartfelt messages, photos and videos showing the fragile dog slowly regaining strength beside the little girl who had noticed him when no one else did. For Sarah, the outpouring of support was both overwhelming and deeply comforting. People she had never met offered help, donations and words of encouragement. Local businesses chipped in with supplies, and volunteers signed up to foster other abused animals in need. Titan's story had sparked something powerful, a wave of compassion that seemed to ripple through the community. Sarah watched Lily with a grateful heart. Despite her young age, the baby was a beacon of hope. Her simple act of noticing Titan had transformed lives. "You're a little hero, Lily," Sarah whispered, as she pushed the stroller toward the hospital again. Inside, Titan's progress was steady. The once gaunt and fearful dog now greeted visitors with soft, tentative tail wags. His eyes, though still cautious, carried a spark of life. The scars on his muzzle were fading, and the fur was slowly growing back. One morning, Dr. Harper brought good news. "Titan's physical wounds are healing well," she said, her smile bright. "Now we need to focus on his emotional recovery. It's going to take time, but he's a fighter." Sarah nodded. "What can we do to help him feel safe?" Dr. Harper looked thoughtful. "Consistent care, patience, and love. And if possible, a calm, loving environment where he can feel secure." Sarah's mind immediately went to Lily's home, a warm, quiet place filled with gentle voices and soft hands. "Maybe Titan can stay with us when he's ready," she said quietly. Dr. Harper smiled. "That would be wonderful. Dogs like Titan need stability and kindness, and it sounds like you and Lily have plenty to offer. That day, Sarah shared the idea with her family. They agreed it was the right step. Titan deserved a second chance at life, surrounded by people who would cherish him. Meanwhile, the detective assigned to Titan's case continued his investigation. Evidence suggested that Titan had been deliberately abandoned, possibly by someone who had grown tired of caring for him. The community was outraged. Pet cruelty was not common in their neighborhood, and the thought of someone harming an innocent animal stirred a fierce desire for justice. A neighborhood meeting was called. People gathered in the local community center, united by their shared grief and determination to protect animals from harm. Pet safety campaigns were launched, and plans for a local animal welfare group took shape. Sarah felt a surge of pride and hope. Lily's innocent act had ignited a movement, something far greater than she had imagined. Back at the hospital, Titan's healing took a surprising turn. One afternoon, Lily reached out to him with a small, worn-out teddy bear she had brought from home. She placed it gently next to Titan and smiled. To everyone's astonishment, Titan's tail wagged faster, and he nudged the teddy bear with his nose. It was the first time he had shown signs of playfulness. Sarah's heart soared. The dog who had been left to suffer alone was beginning to trust again. Lily's simple kindness was working miracles. As days turned into weeks, Titan's condition improved steadily. The hospital staff marveled at the transformation, a once broken dog now filled with cautious hope. Finally, the day came when Titan was ready to leave the hospital. Sarah and Lily were there, waiting anxiously. When Titan stepped into the sunlight outside, he paused, looking around at the new world before him. Then, with a gentle wag of his tail, he walked toward Lily, who giggled and reached out to pet him. In that moment, a new chapter began, for Titan, for Lily, and for everyone who had been touched by their story. From cruel abandonment to the warmth of a loving home, Titan's journey was far from over. But with each step he was healing, not just his body but his spirit, and all because a baby's innocent curiosity refused to look away. It was a quiet morning in the small suburban neighborhood where Sarah lived, a place where kids played freely in yards and neighbors greeted each other with familiar smiles. But this morning was different. Something was wrong, and even the birds seemed to sense it. Sarah was pushing her baby daughter Lily down the cracked sidewalk when her eye caught a strange sight in a nearby alley. At first, she thought it was just some trash or an abandoned object. But as she got closer, the horrifying truth became clear. There, duct-taped tightly to a metal pole, was a large German shepherd. The dog's eyes were wide with fear and confusion, his thick fur matted and dirty, his body trembling from days of neglect. His muzzle was taped shut, muffling any cries he might have made. The scene was so cruel it stopped Sarah cold. Lily, barely 1 year old, noticed the dog too. Though she couldn't speak clearly yet, she began to babble and point at the helpless animal. Her tiny voice broke through the heavy silence of the alley, as if she were calling out to the dog, begging him to hold on. Sarah's heart clenched painfully. How could anyone do this to a creature so loyal, so innocent? The dog was trapped, vulnerable and clearly suffering. The tape had rubbed raw wounds into his skin, and he was weak from days without food or water. Without hesitation, Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed animal control. She tried to keep calm for Lily's sake, but her hands trembled as she described the scene. Within minutes, the local animal rescue team arrived, moving quickly but carefully to free the terrified dog. As they cut through the layers of duct tape, the dog flinched and whimpered, his trust shattered by whatever horrors he had endured. Yet beneath the pain there was a flicker of hope, an instinct to survive that refused to die. Sarah held Lily close, tears streaming down her face as she watched the rescue unfold. The dog's eyes met Lily's, and for a moment a silent connection passed between them, an unspoken promise that someone would care, that this nightmare was ending. Neighbors began to gather, murmuring in shock and disbelief. Stories spread. Quickly, a dog left to suffer alone for days, tied up and abandoned like garbage. The community was shaken to its core. Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The dog, whom the rescuers named Titan for his strength, needed immediate medical care, and more than that, a chance to heal from the cruelty he had endured. But what touched Sarah most was her baby's quiet insistence. Lily hadn't looked away. She had seen the suffering and refused to ignore it, even though she was so small. And that, Sarah realized, was a kind of courage that could change everything. The morning light spilled gently through the windows of Sarah's home as Titan took his first cautious steps inside the place that would soon be his sanctuary. The air was filled with soft sounds, Lily's coos, the rustle of blankets, and the tentative padding of paws on the wooden floor. For Titan, this was a world that felt both strange and full of promise. The hospital walls, sterile and cold, were behind him now. Ahead lay a life slowly being rebuilt from the fragments of pain and fear. Sarah watched as Titan explored his new surroundings with careful curiosity. The once vicious weight of trauma still lingered in his eyes, but there was something else now, a fragile thread of trust beginning to weave through the fear. Lily, as always, was close by. Her tiny hand reached out repeatedly, touching Titan's fur with a gentle certainty that seemed to say, "You're safe now." She didn't understand all the cruelty he had faced, but she knew he needed love. Days turned into weeks, and the routine settled in. Sarah devoted herself to Titan's care, following the vet's advice with diligence. She cleaned his wounds, administered medications, and made sure he had nutritious meals. But the hardest work was helping him heal emotionally, teaching him that not everyone would hurt him, that home could be a place of peace. Titan's progress was slow but steady. Some days he would retreat into himself, flinching at sudden movements or loud noises. Other days he'd wag his tail tentatively when Lily laughed or reached for him. Each small victory felt monumental. Sarah often found herself marveling at the quiet resilience of both Titan and Lily. The baby's simple acts of kindness, offering a toy, sitting beside him, whispering sweet sounds, worked miracles. It was as if Lily's innocent heart was stitching Titan's broken spirit back together, thread by thread. Neighbors stopped by regularly, bringing gifts or just checking in. Titan became a symbol of hope and healing in the community. People who had once felt helpless now felt inspired to act, to protect, to rescue, to love. But not everyone was ready to forget what had happened. The investigation into Titan's abandonment was ongoing, and the police had identified a suspect. A neighbor who had recently moved away was linked to the cruel act, though the reasons remained unclear. Sarah kept the news to herself for the most part, focusing on the here and now. Justice would come in time. What mattered most was the life they were building together. One afternoon, as Sarah watched Lily crawl toward Titan with a bright smile, something remarkable happened. Titan, who had always been cautious, allowed Lily to climb onto his back. He didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, he lay still as if accepting the baby's trust. The moment was captured in a photo by a visiting friend, a picture that would soon become iconic. A battered dog and a baby, united in a silent promise to protect and heal each other. Sarah's heart swelled with hope. For Titan, the journey was far from over. There would be setbacks, fears to conquer, and scars that might never fully fade. But with Lily and Sarah by his side, he was learning that life could still be beautiful. And for Lily, the experience was teaching something profound about empathy and courage, that even the smallest voice can spark change, that kindness is a powerful force. Together, they were rewriting the story, not just of a dog who was found duct-taped to a pole, but of the incredible power of love to heal wounds seen and unseen. Titan's next chapter had just begun. Months had passed since Titan was found duct-taped to that cold metal pole, a dog once left for dead, now slowly becoming a beloved member of Sarah and Lily's family. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous, but the journey had been filled with challenges, heartbreak, and quiet victories. Titan's scars, both physical and emotional, were still there, reminders of the cruelty he had endured. But those scars no longer defined him. Instead, they told a story of resilience and hope, of survival against impossible odds. The day of Titan's official adoption arrived, a small ceremony held in the backyard, surrounded by neighbors, rescuers, and friends who had followed the dog's journey from despair to healing. Lily sat in Sarah's lap, clapping her tiny hands with joy as Titan wagged his tail energetically, a far cry from the frightened animal he once was. Sarah's voice trembled as she spoke. Titan has taught us all about courage. The courage to fight, to heal, and to love again. He's proof that even in the darkest moments, kindness can light the way. Tears glistened in many eyes, including Sarah's. The journey had been painful, but this day was a victory not just for Titan, but for everyone who had refused to turn away. But the triumph wasn't just in the adoption. It was in the little moments. Titan resting his head on Lily's lap, the way he greeted Sarah at the door, the trust slowly building with each passing day. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah sat quietly on the porch with Titan at her side. Lily was asleep inside, her soft breathing a lullaby of innocence. Titan rested his head on Sarah's knee, eyes half closed, but alert. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a future where the shadows of the past no longer haunted him. The detective's investigation had concluded with justice served. The person responsible for Titan's abandonment had been held accountable. Small comfort in a painful story. The community's resolve to protect its animals had never been stronger. More importantly, the experience had sparked something larger, a movement to raise awareness about animal cruelty and the importance of compassion. Sarah and others organized educational programs, fundraisers, and volunteer groups, ensuring Titan's story would inspire change far beyond their neighborhood. Lily, though still a baby, had become a symbol of that change, the little voice that saw suffering and demanded action. As Titan shifted his weight and nuzzled Sarah's hand, she whispered, "Thank you, buddy, for fighting, for trusting, for showing us all what love really means." In that quiet moment, the broken dog and the mother shared a bond forged through pain and healing. They had all been changed forever. The baby who saw a dog in need, the woman who refused to give up, and the dog who refused to surrender. Their lives were forever intertwined, and together they proved that even in the darkest places, hope can grow. Titan's story was no longer just about cruelty and survival. It was a testament to the triumph of the heart.